Okay, great. So I'm doing double duty this today because I'm going to do just a small little presentation before I introduce the star of the show, Dennis. But I am also going to introduce have the introductory welcome slides for the user group as well. So you can see we have an agenda here. I'm going to talk about getting some great Canadian data, public data, and where you can find some suggestions on where you can find it, and just to get the creative juices going. And then Dennis is going to tell you all about some of his great dashboards that he has on Tableau Public. And then, like I said, we'll have lots of time at the end for questions. And then without further ado, I'm going to get into my part, which is Canadian data. So I have a few slides, but I'm going to go back and forth to a few websites. So I'm going to not put it in presentation mode. So we were talking as TUG leaders, and we thought, we never go over what's publicly available for Canadian data. And I like to do this a lot, kind of in my spare time. If I think of a question I have, I kind of try and go and find some answers for it. Dennis and I were talking just before everybody came in, it's easy to find the American data because a lot of the American data is publicly available, but there is some great Canadian data that we can find. So I'll give you some thoughts, and you can probably work with it and maybe find some more public data of your own. So most of you probably know who I am. I'm the TUG, one of the TUG co-leaders for Toronto with Roland. I'm a Tableau user group ambassador, and I did work on the board for Viz for Social Good as well, although I resigned from that now. But basically, I love data, and I love working with Tableau. And so I'm happy to be here to talk to you guys about Tableau and what data we can use. So the data I'm going to start with is CIHI. CIHI is a Canadian, well, I can get to the acronym because I'll go to the website. I think it's Canadian Institute for Health Information. So it is a federal organization that collects data all across Canada, and they collect all kinds of health data. They collect hospital data. There's some there on, medications Canadians take, and some things like that. And it is, so I'll switch over to their website, and it is actually surprisingly a lot easier to access than it used to be. So kudos to them. They've done a lot of work on this website, and they've made this a lot easier to use and a lot more accessible, a lot more intuitive. So basically, you come to this Canadian Institute for Health Information, you come to their website. It's pretty simple to find. You can just Google CIHI, and you come here to access data and reports. It's obviously they have their recently released here at the start. Oh, and they've had some just this week, which is awesome. Wow. So you can see all kinds of interesting stuff, hospital stays in Canada. So they collect hospital information all across Canada based on some international standards, international standard codes, diagnostic codes, and they have all these reports. The data, when you download it, is pretty easy to use in Tableau. It comes in a very, we talk a lot about the format for Tableau, where the information comes in columns, so that's easy to get into Tableau. And it does come in this sort of easy to use format that's kind of ready for Tableau. You don't have to do any, you don't have to do any modification. From the ones that I have used before and downloaded, they seem to be pretty good. So you don't have to kind of do a lot of data manipulation. So that's great to see. So you can see, you can come here and you can flip through these topics. Lots of interesting stuff here on health topics. They also have, you can also flip through their site, because they do have lots of information on their data integrity and what they do to make sure the data is as accurate as possible. And when you have a whole bunch of hospitals key punching things all across the country, you can imagine that they have very definite standards that they want to maintain so that their data can be as accurate and consistent across so many jurisdictions, because the provinces run healthcare. So obviously that is a bit of a challenge. So they do set some data standards, and they have a lot of information on their standards and methodology, which is great, especially if you're doing research on the data. Okay. As well, if you wanted to compare Canada to other OECD countries, you can go to OECD, and they have lots of metrics that they compare Canada to these countries, not only in health, but also a lot of other, economic indicators. They even have, Makeover Monday has featured these from time to time. I know they did maternity leave one time. They did unemployment rates, and they also have lots of health ones as well. I know during the pandemic, I went to OECD and downloaded because it was at one time thought that Canada had more restrictions for COVID because of our hospital capacity was lower than a lot of the OECD countries, which I did confirm with data. Yeah, so lots of interesting stuff there, but you guys can, I can send this out with the follow-up email, so you guys have all these links and websites, so you can follow up and play around with it yourself. Great, so the next thing I'm going to talk about, of course, is Stats Canada data, and obviously StatsCan data is our main source of open source data in Canada. And they have an extensive library of things that you can download. So the best way to access this Stats Canada data is to, I occasionally come in and just look up this daily. So basically every weekday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, StatsCan releases a series of reports that they have been working on. And you can see it's usually 3 or 4 topics a day. Sometimes it's more, sometimes, usually it's at least 3. But you can see there is lots of interesting stuff here, tons of great stuff. And I know, for example, I've done a visualization on vehicle registrations in Canada. So this is whether we're basically getting more green, green sort of fueled cars instead of the combustion engines. So you can see we're getting a little bit better, but probably not as good as we should. So this was a fairly recent one, but they have all kinds of interesting things at StatsCan. You can also search StatsCan, but it'd be a little bit challenging. But you can, it's probably easier to use Google than it is to use StatsCan to search, because the federal government websites can be a bit challenging. But lots of examples of things that they do release. Obviously, they have all the census information. So I've used income per forward sorting area that comes on the census data. I've used that in business reports before. I've done a visualization on the green vehicle registrations all across Canada. Gas prices was one of the first visualizations that I ever did when I first started using Tableau, because it was summertime and gas prices seemed to be really high. Also, I did a visualization on itinerant aircraft movements. So yeah, of course, during COVID, the aircraft movements nosedived. And I wanted to see after when COVID seemed to be abating, I wanted to see if the aircraft movements had come back, and it's actually really interesting because domestically they did come back fairly quickly. Well, they didn't come back for a year and a half, but when they did come back, and then they kind of went over the previous peak, and now they've kind of seemed to have dropped off again. It's pretty interesting to look at that data. The only thing about StatsCan data is it comes out more like a spreadsheet. It comes out more like a report. If you wanted to know the information, it's like you would be using Excel to look at the information, which, I mean, we're going to try to use Tableau for it. So so we want it kind of in a different shape. So they have lots of headers and lots of footers, and they tend to have it in a kind of a financial spreadsheet where you have the months out to the side. So I mean, that's a bit challenging to get into Tableau. Now, I just have a little, because you can customize the table. So if you click add or remove data, when you go into the tables in StatsCan, it will let you customize the layout. And if you can actually put as much of the fields in row as possible, then you'll get it come out more like this. So you can see this is the electric car one that, or the vehicle registrations that I downloaded. And I specified them all as rows, which seems a little counterintuitive. Like to me, it seems like if you specified them as columns, they would all come out. But anyway, but it's row. So if you specify them as row, then it comes out where the fields come out as columns. And that will go right into Tableau. Otherwise, it gets a little messy because the column header that you would be using, if it's in a row, then it doesn't repeat, and then you have to kind of do a lot of data manipulation, either in Tableau Prep or manually in Excel. So it does get to be a bit labor intensive. So, but there's a bit of a tip there. Anyways, hopefully that makes your life a little bit easier. And they do have all kinds of geographies, either national data or provincial data. And, you can get all kinds of time frames and stuff as well. So just, is there something in the chat? Yes, the links are in the slide deck. Yeah, so I'll be providing that for sure. Yep. Okay, great. So my next example is local data. So of course, we're talking about Toronto, and Toronto has a lot of interesting data. The police data, of course, you can go onto the Toronto Police website, and I can put that link in actually, because I didn't put it in this time, but I will put it in before I send the slide deck out. They have major crime indicators. They have bicycle or auto thefts, for example, assaults, shooting and firearms discharges. So lots of information there that you can download and have a look at. If you have any questions there you wanted to delve into. The City of Toronto itself also has their own data, some of which comes from the other websites, but they do have an open data section of their website, and they do have like sort of things collected there, both from the police and TTC, traffic volumes, precipitation data, lots of interesting data there. So for example, in that particular case, I actually did a visualization on the assaults on the Toronto subway system, because I thought I have a daughter that travels on the subway every day, and I was a little bit alarmed by some stuff that seemed to be reporting. And I thought, well, maybe that's just the media. And in fact, it's probably not just the media. It does seem to be increasing quite a bit. So that was a bit challenging. I downloaded it. I had to kind of, I should have saved them as CSVs, and I could have unioned them all together in Tableau or in Tableau Prep. But I saved them as Excel files and then had to manipulate them a little bit. So that was not quite as simple as maybe the Kai data or how I downloaded the Stats Canada data, but it was in a pretty good format. So the column headers were where they should be, and that sort of thing. So it was pretty easy to manipulate. Okay, great. And the last example I have is weather data. So if you're interested in the climate and, is it getting warmer in Canada, and, how much warmer is it getting, and all that sort of thing, you can get historical data at climate.weather.gc.ca. Again, that is another federal website, so it's easier just to kind of go directly in, as opposed to search around on a federal website. It gets a bit sticky, or just Google it, like Canadian weather data. But basically what you do is you go in to climateweather.gc.ca and you search for a station. So every city has multiple weather stations, and actually even at a particular weather station. So we've downloaded Toronto data, we've downloaded Calgary data, we've downloaded Halifax weather data, and even a particular station like, say, Halifax Stanfield Airport may have more than one listing, and it'll be like from 1975 to 19 95, and then there'll be another listing that goes from 95 to present day type of thing. So you might have to download a bunch of different, and you can either download it hourly, daily, or monthly. And then you go in to download the monthly data daily, and then if you perhaps choose January, then when you download the daily data, it will download January to December. So it's a little different, but anyways, you can play around with it. But the data does come out pretty in a pretty great format, so it's pretty easy to get it, take it kind of directly from there and kind of put it into Tableau. You can only download like a year at a time though, so if you want to do a number of years, you do have to union them together. But it's pretty easy to do that in Tableau Prep. But anyways, those are different level of data aggregations you can get, so the different level of detail. And so for that, I have a rough draft that I do for Halifax because I like to monitor whether it's going to be nice on my birthday or not, and I like to have fun with like whether it was in 1975, did it snow on my birthday, and fun stuff like that. But so I keep a rough draft of Halifax and I keep that up to date. But Kirk did this one for Toronto, obviously in 2019, and you can see like he did the whether the average temperature was getting warmer from 1975 to 2018, and of course we can see from the trend line that it definitely is. And then you can see the on the heat map, he has some more information here too, as far as like what the trend is, and on a particular day, and whether it's warm or cold usually on a particular day. So yeah, so great stuff. So yep, so that is pretty much it for me. But I think we'll switch over, if you don't mind, we'll switch over to Dennis, and then we can take questions all together at the end. I'll just check somebody. Yep, okay, good. I don't think there's any current questions, so I will stop presenting. And I will introduce Dennis. So actually, I still need to present, one sec. And yeah, I'll present this one. Okay, so we're pretty excited. We're pretty excited today to have Dennis come from Ottawa and present some of his dashboards. So Dennis is an associate professor at Carleton, who's been doing a lot of really cool stuff in Tableau using maps, and I'm sure he's going to show you all of his stuff, but some of his stuff in his sort of creative process. But he's got some really great visualizations on Tableau Public you should check out. And without further ado, I'll introduce Dennis. Welcome, Dennis.
Great. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to share a little bit about some of the work that I've been doing for the past couple of years. I'm fairly new to Tableau. I started learning Tableau in November 2020, so I still consider myself a newbie. There's a lot of things that I still do kind of probably the hard way and don't quite know like how to do it more efficiently, but I think ultimately, if it comes out nice and pretty at the end and useful at the end, the visualization, then I think it's all kind of, it doesn't really matter what kind of goes into it, right? But let me share my screen really quick. So I'm always a little surprised when I get asked to speak, because I think part of it is I operate in a different space than I think most of you are currently working. So I don't really do, for example, I don't do business dashboards, so to speak. So most of the stuff that I do is really visualizations or maps that help me to kind of communicate some of my research findings. And so I collect data on my own, various studies, as well as I use secondary data like publicly available data sets. I'm originally from the United States. I'm much more familiar with the US Census, but I'm starting to get to know the Canadian Census as well. Just a couple other things, about me. So I've been a social worker for roughly, oh my gosh, about 25 years. And for about half that time, I've been in academia, including getting my PhD. And I've been a faculty member since 2010, taught at the University of Houston and California State University Fullerton before we made the big move to Ottawa, where I took a job at Carleton University. And so I was born and raised and originally from California. And the first question that people ask is why? You know, why did you leave California for Ottawa? And there's no really good answer. I mean, it's a lot colder than we expected. It's a lot further. It's a lot smaller, but we've actually enjoyed being in Ottawa because it's a lot smaller. There's less traffic. And it's been a great place for us to raise our family. We make the trip out to, I don't know how many of you are actually in Toronto because this is virtual, but we make the trip out to Toronto at least once or twice a month to get our culture, like ethnic food fix. You know, we love visiting Chinatown and in Toronto and things like that. So like Candice says, I do research on health equity issues, and I use a lot of GIS mapping. So I do a lot of GIS. So I come from that space. And so a lot of the dashboards or the data visualizations I create have maps because I really come from that space, and I love kind of working with maps, looking at maps as well as using maps in my work. And you know, I really kind of came to this whole data visualization space, and especially via learning Tableau fairly recently, in just, you know, a little over 2 years, where I picked up Tableau and really got in more and more into this whole notion or whole space, you know, thinking about data visualization. And so a lot of the past couple of years is just me trying to learn as much as I can and practice as much as I can. And so a lot of the visualizations that I'll show and a lot of the ones that I've done are really focused, me doing a number of different things. There's, you know, the data fam, as you know, there's a lot of community projects. And so I think I've done all of them at some point. And so it's just really been my way to just practice as much as I can and hone my craft. And I've been really shocked and astonished about how I think my own work and how I've been able to apply kind of what I've learned in my work, how much I've grown just by practicing and getting feedback from folks and just kind of doing and putting out a lot of bad vizzes, as well as putting, you know, and occasionally I'll get a good one going, you know, and putting out a good one. So I'm very much kind of in a kind of student mode right now. This is kind of my Tableau public. I do all my visiting in Tableau public. So this has kind of been my journey. Back in November 2020, I participated for the first time in what's called the 30-day map challenge. And so it's basically a challenge. They have a prompt every day. So for example, one prompt may be red, another prompt may be use a new tool, and which in this case, I decided to try out Tableau for the very first time. And you'll notice I couldn't even figure out how to print it out. So I took a screenshot of this map, and it's basically, as you can see, that first map is really just the default map. The one that it just automatically comes with, and there was data that was, you know, part of it as well. But I couldn't figure out how to publish it. I couldn't figure out how to print it out. So I basically just took a screenshot of it. But when it really started was, okay, I was just intrigued by this tool. I saw a lot of other kind of maps that people were doing and putting out, and just inspired me to kind of look more into Tableau. And once I discovered it, and once I got really into the functionality, the map, and, you know, the mapping piece is kind of newer in Tableau, but even kind of the interactivity that you can incorporate at the end, and some of the kind of tools that you can do to really kind of create kind of design visualizations that are useful as well as people can interact with, that intrigued me, and I just kind of fell in love with the tool. I come from a space where I was trained statistically in SPSS. I've used SAS, I've used Stata, R, I've trained in GIS, ArcGIS, and then I use QGIS now because it's free. But nowadays, I still do some of that stuff, managing data in Stata, for example, or managing spatial data in QGIS. But when it comes to visualizing, Tableau is really the tool that I turn to now. And you can kind of see, I think, I just did a presentation on how just reflecting on how Tableau Public improved my map making. And this was kind of a slide that I had as part of that presentation. And I think just looking at this, I think one could really see the growth in terms of the map making, kind of the design piece of it and things like that. So there's a couple of kind of guiding principles. Part of me is just, I kind of make this up as I go. I kind of draw from various sources. But, for everything that I put out, I try to learn something new. And so, for example, it wasn't really until like a year or a half into kind of using Tableau when I finally understood parameters and it really started to click. And now I try to use parameters in every viz that I can just to kind of apply it in different use cases. Generally, I try to keep it fairly simple. Bar graphs obviously are quintessential. I like small multiples, but even maps, I try to keep it simple because I think, there's oftentimes most maps or most charts really have one or two really key messages. And it's really important to try to kind of really highlight those in each kind of visualization. And that's kind of, kind of a principle that I try to apply in each of the visualizations I do. What Tableau has really kind of made me realize is that, I do have like this creative side that it's a side of me, that artistic side that I really never knew I had, but it's in the data visualization kind of space. And then using a tool like Tableau has really kind of brought that out for me. And so I focus a lot in my visits on imagery, like, thinking about kind of what the kind of broader theme is and trying to bring that out using, so I love custom shapes. I started using Figma last year as a tool to kind of design custom shapes that I bring into Tableau. And I love using custom shapes because it's a great way to kind of communicate kind of messages just by the symbols. And so I'll show a couple examples where I do that. And then finally, I think Tableau has great mapping visualization kind of functionality. But coming from the GIS space, I really focus on kind of centering the map. And I'll show you a couple examples of how I do that. And the map is often kind of central to most of my visits. It's the biggest. Everything else is kind of surrounding the map, and so most of my maps kind of come out like that. All right, so in the slide presentation, I can share the link if you want. This is in Tableau Public, but I'm going to just go through a few of these visits. So these are some of the visits that I've done over the past. So 2022, I started in 2020. I got my Tableau Desktop Specialist certificate in 2021. I decided I really needed to kind of try to have a little more structure in my learning and how I was using Tableau. And so I decided to take the exam and really study towards that exam. So I ended up getting the certificate in the summer of 2021. And then 2022 was really kind of a breakthrough kind of year for me in terms of I think me finding my own style. And kind of really finding my niche when it comes to designing and kind of working with Tableau and putting out the visits. And so these are examples of kind of 5 visits that came out in 2020 that I really enjoyed kind of thinking about and working on. And I think they kind of came out nicely in my mind, from kind of what I imagined and then to the end, it kind of came out like exactly kind of what I was thinking about. So let's go to kind of the first one, and the links are all in here. So if you go, you can click on any of these. So the first one was for IronViz 20. Well, last year there was 2 of them. So 20, which one? The first one, 2022. The theme was art, and so I decided to focus on street art in LA. And so there's a number of kind of different skill sets that I really had to kind of learn. So for example, I found a website that had a map, and it was a web application that allowed people to search for street art across the globe, and they had an LA specific site. And so I learned a little bit of Python to figure out how to scrape the data from that website and get that data, and then using that data, created this site. And specifically, I wanted to show you the kind of the map, right? Because that's kind of where my heart is. So here, I learned a couple things like navigation tools. I learned how to kind of show kind of the picture in the, if I had a link, image links, I kind of figured out how to show that. Hidden containers, there's a lot of things that were kind of tools that I had kind of picked up here and there. It's all culminated in this. And I was trying to, because this was IronViz, I really tried to kind of hone and put that all into here. And so this was a map that I created using a custom map in Mapbox. So that's why the kind of the background is blue, with kind of like, if you drill down, for example, to downtown LA, so you'll see like I use Mapbox, because Mapbox is is the one that provides the base maps for Tableau, as you know. So I went to Mapbox, learned how to create a custom map with custom fonts and things like that, and kind of then I used Figma to kind of create the background, and I wanted to and because this was street art, right, I really wanted to convey that theme, right, with the brick wall, kind of urban looking. I Googled street graffiti or street graffiti color palette, and then came up with this color palette. And so I really wanted to kind of hone in on that theme, that everything was just splattered onto a wall. And so that's kind of where that came up. And I created kind of the image of the splatter in Figma to lay over the map. And so there was a number of kind of things I had to learn to kind of put this together, but it's such a great learning experience. And so, and again, I love the functionality. And so when you kind of click on any of these, it'll show the image of the street art in this little thing. I think there's, some things I might change kind of looking back a year later. I might want to make this a little bigger, the image a little bigger, to kind of really show the street art and really communicate that. But this was just kind of, I was really happy with the way this came out. And, I had, I worked with kind of hidden containers for the first time, and things like that. There was kind of the instruction thing, but this was the first time I did kind of this kind of layover, kind of instruction kind of container on top of that. So, this was kind of the first example in 2022. It was around February 2022, where it just, all the things I was trying to learn over the first year of Tableau, I kind of came up and trying to apply things like kind of dashboard design things to this viz. So the second one I want to bring up is, okay, again, the map is kind of central, right? Like, there's a map of Nepal. So this was a community project called Fizz for Social Good. Well, Candice, this was her project. She was on the board of this project for a while. And this is one of my favorite projects to do, Fizz for Social Good, because it kind of, it's really closely linked to the work I do as a social worker and as a social work profession, a professor. And so this was a project that focused on, and so this project, community project, they partner with organizations that are interested in getting people to, use their data and visualize their data. And they have a pool of volunteers who kind of are interested and to volunteer, over a period of a month to work with the data. And then we all kind of share our visualizations and things like that. So this was a visualization I did for a group called Build Up Nepal, who helps families in rural areas build houses and and gain self-sufficiency that way. And so I tried to apply some kind of dashboard kind of design principles here. I have the big bands, that's kind of redundant, the bands, the bar graphs, but I really also wanted to make this kind of like what you might see in like if you're working with a GIS program and working with the map and really allowing the user to interact with it. So I have the tooltips across. These are all where all the different projects were, and so I try to create a legend that they can actually kind of interact with. So for example, they can choose the symbology, like so if I click on jobs created, hopefully it works. It'll turn the symbol, so the symbols are now kind of different sizes based on the number of jobs that were created in the various projects, and then houses built, etc. And so I kind of created this in a way that somebody might be working with a GIS software and working with this map, allowing them to turn off the tooltips, for example, and things like that. And then, and again, I just love the functionality in Tableau where you can actually allow, just simply by checking filter, you can allow users to kind of select on different charts to then filter off of other charts. All right. And kind of what I really wanted to kind of convey in this was really, you'll notice everything's kind of dark, but then the things that are blue, I wanted to really highlight the projects in the map, right? And hopefully those kind of come out. And so that was kind of what I was thinking when I designed this viz. So like I mentioned, I like to use symbols, symbols, but custom shapes is the terminology in Tableau. And so in this viz, so some of you might know Lindsay Bessendahl. She's a Tableau visionary, does a lot of work in the healthcare area. And she runs the project Health Viz community project. And so one month, she basically shared her data, sleeping data, that she pulled off Amazon Halo for 2021 and asked us to visualize that data. And so I was going to try to go for a calendar at first, but I didn't quite know how to do that yet. So I ended up just doing this really simplified. So each of these circles represents a day. And then I try to use these really simple kind of symbols that I created in Figma, where these dark ones are like, if you imagine eyes, right? Like when the eyes are closed, that's to convey that that was a good night of sleep, versus when the eyes are open or half open, or to convey like less sleep during that night. And so I mean, this was kind of a fun way for me to kind of convey that. I think originally I actually had little eyeballs in here too, like the pupils, and that looked a little freaky to me, so I took those out. But I think it still conveys the same message. But it was hopefully a simple way, and I think just looking at it, I was happy the way it turned out, because it's kind of quite easy to see kind of which nights weren't that great, right, or the worst nights, right? So for example, it's really these open circles representing open eyes are really, they kind of pop out of the viz. And so that was what I was hoping to achieve. And I think it kind of turned out okay. This is, I think this, this viz ended up getting a viz of the day kind of last year, and I wanted to keep it very simple. So I am one of the co-leads for the Edu Visitors Community Project, and so we provide education-related data to folks who are interested in visualizing education creating visualizations on education issues. And so I actually curated this data set. It's basically kind of the percent of kids who are have access to internet across the globe. And I think there's, I don't know how many cities, again, 87 countries, how many countries? 87 countries that we had data on that came out of the UNICEF database, global database. And here again, I wanted to kind of create a custom shape or symbol that really reflected the issue, right? And very clearly, I think the first thing that kind of came to mind was the wireless connection symbol. I don't even know what it's called. But everybody has the bars, and I basically created each shape from the blank one to the full one. I created those in Figma and brought them into Tableau to convey that. And this turned out to be pretty successful. And I was able to, again, the functionality is so great in Tableau. It makes it so easy, but to basically distinguish it, focusing on urban kids, rural kids, and kind of a happy result of this, kind of unexpected, is, as you're kind of clicking on each of these population groups, it's kind of cool. It looks like, you're either losing or you're gaining wireless connection. The strength of your wireless connection is growing or decreasing as you're clicking over this. And so that was a kind of a cool effect that I didn't quite expect, or wasn't quite going for, but it kind of turned out pretty well. All right. And then finally, this was a pretty simple viz. So again, this was Viz for Social Good, a group called India Water Portal, and they collect information and maintain a database on water resources across India. And so the project was, they provided us some data and we needed to visit. And so I ended up creating a kind of a tile map. The white circle represents population, and I found kind of an image of a water droplet. And I'm actually, pleasantly surprised how it turned out when I brought it into Tableau. But I kind of cleaned it up in Figma, brought it in as a custom shape, and used, and the size of the water droplet really, I think tells a story, I think, right? Because, we're dealing with water, and it just turned out really nicely. And so this is an example of kind of where I really want to focus on the imagery of water. And I think the water droplets really turned out well and communicated that. Okay. And again, I allowed the user, again, the functionality to turn it into small multiples sorted by, so these are the states in India. So sorted by ABC alphabetically, and so forth. Also, like, size of population, as well as how safe the water is. Sorry, my internet is stuck now.
Awesome. Like, I love those visualizations. I love
am I still there? Or
you
sorry.
are still there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, you're still here for sure. But
Okay.
Sometimes Tableau Public sticks, so it's just kind of, yeah. It's just takes a second to kind of.
Okay. Well, my last slide was just a thank you and with some of my links. And so I'm just gonna share.
Awesome.
I'm gonna stop sharing, and then just share the link for everybody.
Oh, perfect. Yep. So I so if everybody wants to, or if anybody has any questions, I mean, you can put them in the chat, but you can also just unmute yourself at this point. And
thank you, everybody. Sorry about that rough ending.
Beautiful visualizations, though. I love the detail on the water droplets. That was really cool. So you work a lot in Figma for the images then, and then once you have those images, then you bring them into Tableau, just as an image.
Yeah, I do, because I think so some of the time it's helpful. Like sometimes the images that I find, it's helpful to make the background completely transparent. So that's kind of, there's a plugin in Figma that allows you to kind of remove backgrounds and stuff like that.
Right.
So sometimes it's helpful
Yeah.
to do that. Like for the eyeballs, it's just basically a circle that's either half full, 3/4 full, etc., right, with different colors. And so I created that in Figma. I mean, you probably can do that in Power, any kind of tool. You probably could have created that like PowerPoint or to create the circle with that's half closed and stuff. But yeah, but I've kind of adopted Figma. I kind of for about a year now I've been using it, and it seems like, for the non-graphic designer, it just seems like a really easy tool to use.
Right. Yeah. And then you just bring them in as a mark, is it? Like
yeah. So you add it to as a shape. Yeah. Like I don't want to show my folder because it's a total mess. But in the repository, there's a shape folder where you can add,
right.
You can, maybe add another folder like user folder, and you can add custom shapes to that. And then once you're in Tableau, you change any symbol to shapes, and then you can choose your custom shapes that way. But yeah,
right.
So that's most
awesome.
of the time I'm doing that.
Oh, very interesting. And you have just some very interesting shapes that just like completely transform your visualization, by using that shape. It's very interesting. Like especially like what you said, like the water, you were trying to emphasize like the, for the safe water, like and the detail on the water bubble was just very interesting. Even there's shading on part of it, and it was very really
it took me a while to find that precise image, but once I found it, it worked out well.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, and just briefly for those people who are interested, since we both brought it up, Viz for Social Good is basically it's just a bunch of people. It started as Tableau people that kind of organize with nonprofits to get their data, and then sort of throw it out to the community and see what the community comes up with, and the community comes up with a bunch of beautiful visualizations for this nonprofit organization, and then they choose the 3 best that month or for that project, and they present them to the organization. And it's of course very helpful with the nonprofit to have at their fingertips these expert visualizers to come up with these beautiful images so that they can promote their charity and the great work they're doing. So Viz for Social Good, if you're interested in partaking, it's lots of fun, all kinds of different data and stuff, and very rewarding to be able to see the charity and what they're doing. Yeah. So does anybody have any questions for Dennis or? No? We're a quiet bunch today, I guess. Friday afternoon, probably.
I have a question, actually.
Yes.
Wait, is that mute? Oh, you can hear me. Perfect.
No, we can hear you. No, go ahead.
Thank you. My question to Dennis. And Dennis, the with you have been show tremendous progress in such a short period of time. And did you take any training programs in terms of the visual design? Because the work, particularly the sleep tracker and also the social building is very impressive.
Oh, thank you so much. In design, no. But I think if you hang around enough and you see other people's visits, so I'm usually on Twitter quite a bit. Maybe too much these days. But and if you explore Tableau Public, so I do all my visiting on Tableau Public, and just being in that space, like you're just exposed to a bunch of other work that people put out there which are simply amazing, ranging from very artistic like data art to business dashboards that are absolutely stunning, right? And so I think just being in that space and just practicing, and getting inspired constantly, I think it just kind of rubbed off, I think. So I didn't take, so I took a formal class. I took Tableau's kind of class to prepare for the Tableau desktop certificate. But aside from that, I didn't really take any other formal training. And so, but just being in the space by osmosis, or just being inspired by other people's work, I think it kind of brought out that side that I really didn't realize I had. But it's kind of fun to try to play with the kind of the creativity and different ways to show data.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And just in that realm too, you can subscribe to the Viz of the Day, and you can follow people. So like for instance, we all love Dennis's style, so you can go in and you can follow him, and then when he posts another viz, it'll come up in kind of a little feed for you. So and you can follow the viz of the day, and the viz of the days are always really super impressive. And you can also search. So if you want to visualize call center data or something, you can go in and search on call center data on Tableau Public. I'm talking about Tableau Public if I wasn't specific before. But you can go in and search like call center data on Tableau Public, and it'll come up with some great visualizations that people like, and that people have been, recent things they've done and stuff. So that can help your inspirational process. I know somebody presented before, and they were going to do one on their resume, and they went through how they searched on Tableau Public, for some different styles, and they picked the ones they liked and stuff like that. So that can be very inspirational. Yeah. So sometimes helpful.
Thank you, Candice. Appreciate the context.
Are there any other questions, or you can read the comments in the chat there, Dennis? Everybody was really very wowed by your Basim was. So any other questions? I actually have just a few more slides that I will show just on the about the tug, and then we can come back if anybody else has any questions. Just a couple of notes before we wrap up. If anybody wants to get updates on the Toronto tug, just be sure that you subscribe for updates on the Toronto Tableau user group, because we're going to be switching formats this year. So if you want to make sure that you're kept up to date on everything, just make sure you're logged in there. And then we'll be having another Tableau user group in April, hopefully. And then, of course, Tableau conference is coming up in Las Vegas in May. So just so you are all aware, of course, it's going to have all kinds of the awesome features that we love: the data viz, the village, the data night out, Iron Viz, all that stuff. So registration is now live. And if you register, I think before the end of the month, you save $200. So just so you're aware of that. Yeah. So is there any other questions then? Great. I think we're done for today. Thank you so much, Dennis, for coming and showing your beautiful visualizations. You've been an inspiration to, everybody here and so many people in our community. And everybody be sure to follow him on Tableau Public, and you'll be totally up to date on what Dennis is up to. And of course, he's such a map guru. If you ever want to make a map, you should definitely check out his profile to see all the lovely stuff he's done. It's awesome. And hopefully we'll see you all in April or in May in Vegas. So thanks everybody. And we'll see you next time.